Hey everyone, welcome to our Feng Shui newsletter that we do virtually every month. I'm going to be doing this newsletter myself tonight. Lisa will possibly be doing one in January by herself. But we love doing these things for folks. We'll be getting an awful lot of very positive feedback. And I hope you really enjoy this one. This one's definitely a little different, but I think it could be extremely helpful for a lot of folks out there. Again, this is our virtual newsletter for December. Lisa and I hope you've had a really super Thanksgiving and certainly hope you have a very Merry Christmas. The topic, the topic for today or for this month is being happy, content, and successful living in a smaller space. And not all of you are in real estate. But those of you that are in real estate know that it's becoming somewhat of a theme in certain subdivisions and certain areas, especially in our cities, where space is becoming sort of smaller and at a premium. You know, here's three folks right now living in a very, very small situation. It's amazing how creative these things have gotten to be. Our society really is probably grudgingly moving towards this because we're so used to having large homes. And when I say large homes, with respect to the rest of the world, anything over 2,000 square feet is considered pretty good size. Most of the world has been dealing with much less square footage for a long time now. And you'll find out, I'm going to give you some information later about both these numbers. 25% of citizens can't do this, and we seem to use just 20%. So let me give you some ideas and Feng Shui techniques that will help you, and potentially if you have a client that is inclined in this area too. I found this particular picture on the right-hand side quite interesting. And I'm going to work a little bit of math with you here using ratios. But if you notice, USA is at the top with a 214. That doesn't mean an awful lot, but that's based on a particular square footage of floor space. But if you notice in the middle or down at the bottom, you might say, the UK or the United Kingdom is at 76. So in other words, for every 215 square feet the United States might have for a home or even an apartment, the citizens of UK would be at 76 compared to that. So you can see a lot of these countries are dealing with a lot less square footage. So I'm going to pick on France for just a second. You notice France has got a number of 113 to give you some ideas. Again, I want to give you a comparison. So if you notice, I'm basing this particular equation on 2,000 square feet. So the United States, again, has a ratio of 214, and we're going to compare it to France, which is at 113. So if you work this out, the comparable in France would be 1,056.1 square feet. That's what they're dealing with at that point. At 3,000, which is really a fairly common size home for some areas of this country, in France, it would be a little bit more than half that. But then let's get down to the United Kingdom. They're really, really dealing with very small square footage. Again, especially in the larger cities. So if you base it on 1,500 square feet, in UK, it would be 532.7 square feet. So they've had to be very creative, very organized to be able to live in a contented way in a space like that. Here's one for basing it on 2000. UK, 710 square feet. At 2,500 and at 3,000 square feet, you can see what a wild difference it is for somebody living in the United Kingdom. Lisa and I are asked all the time to do podcasts around the country. And I've gotten and I'm very much looking forward to doing a podcast with the real estate company of Jackson Fuller out of San Francisco. And they're really the ones that made me think that this would be a great topic for our newsletter. They sent me this information. They're based in San Francisco, and it's sort of based on the idea of the incredible shrinking San Francisco condo. So again, I want to show you some of the floor plans that they sent me and what's going on in San Francisco. Now, of course, in California, square footage, even finding something close to work is really hard. But you'll find out that, again, in a lot of other parts of the country, it's happening. So, for example, in 1995 to 2019, this is sort of the drop in size of a regular San Francisco condo. 594 in 95 to right now, they're selling units that are only 405 square feet. One bedroom homes in that area have been also reduced in size quite a lot. Maybe not as bad as the condo, but pretty badly. They also sent me this floor plan for 2 bedrooms. You know, there's a fair number of your clients that possibly are living in homes around 1,276 square feet. But they would find it probably pretty difficult going down to 982 square feet. And then for the few 3-bedroom homes possibly on sale that anybody can afford in that area, this is the drop. The drop is almost 32%. So again, they got me to thinking that this would be a great topic for our newsletter and for our followers. So this is happening in all major cities in the United States. You know, it's not just happening in New York City and San Francisco. So I want you to understand that our country, and possibly if you're in the business, we may need to adapt to this. We might need to come up with ideas about how to help our clients or to help ourselves. So the population, of course, is exploding year after year, and possibly our expectations may need to change. So I'm going to go over some ideas of how we can make this okay with being the new norm. We're already seeing this transformation happening in some ways. You know, for example, you probably know that there is a lot of interest in the tiny house idea. You know, some of them look like this, but they're not all on wheels, as you know. Although, you know, that's sort of a, I guess, a cool way to maybe travel across the country. But a lot of the tiny houses look like this, ladies. And some of them are maybe even a little bit more established, where they even put a deck on. But again, tiny houses are also probably here to stay. Now, these tiny houses are, for a European, probably not tiny. They're just fine. So these folks, they found a way to not only exist, but they survive very positively and content. So I want to go over some of these ways of possibly helping other people to become content with less. As you know, if you've studied Feng Shui, it's a lot about psychology. And it's one of the reasons why Lisa and I really enjoy it. It's a very creative pursuit. It also is very, very much working with the human psyche. So we need to change perception in this case. So we like to use an awful lot of research studies. We've always done that with our classes. So here's one that we have always been using that we easily represent it back to Feng Shui, because Feng Shui is a lot about the idea of the outside. The study found a correlation on employees who had an office with a window and those who did not. And there was a big difference in their health concerns. So an office like this, that is sort of in the inside of a building with no access to the outside, has been found to be difficult for somebody's health, including even cancer. But they also found that these employees were healthier and more productive and happier when they did have access to the outside. I like to bring up in a lot of my classes that there is even some companies in Germany that have it written into their bylaws that employee has the right to get up if they're in the inside of the building every hour for a few minutes to walk by some windows. They know how important this is for somebody's, again, happiness, health, and productivity. So, one of the conclusions, again, if you're working with people that have smaller spaces, is that they need to have a fair amount of natural light to feel their best. So lighting is always huge, but in this case of a smaller space, it might even be more important. So natural light is always preferred greatly in Feng Shui. And you probably know this, but houses with lots of natural light are more welcoming and perceived as more positive. And those curtain and blinds should always be left open as much as possible. Another study had to do with the greenery of the landscaping outside. And again, a very pivotal thing in Feng Shui. They found out that the more green there is, that it raised people's spirits. This study found them to be happier when they lived in an area that had access to more greenery. Wisconsin study using satellite data revealed an interesting fact that we, again, quote all the time, that people living in areas with less than 10% tree canopy were much more likely to be depressed, stressed, and anxious. So it's pivotal that if you're going to be in a smaller space, that hopefully the smaller space is located close to a place where you can get out and walk, where there's a lot of trees and so forth. But you can potentially bring in some of these items inside your smaller space to get some of the same positive effects. So if you're living in a city, those live plants in your home can really help greatly. There's an office that's definitely taking this very, very seriously. So another conclusion, if you're in a smaller environment, please bring in and show nature. There's a lot of ways to show nature, okay? Certainly live plants are always best. They bring in very strong live energy. They actually help with pollution. And there's been a study that shows that people find working and caring for a plant increases their empathy, makes them feel better. So one of the plants that we promote, for example, is a peace lily. You can see that it removes quite a few of different things that pollute the environment. What I like about the peace lily, it's easy to care for, but it does represent strong and peaceful energy. Looks like that. So that's one plant. but there are many, many plants that take care of pollution. A particular study said that even picturing a natural scene vividly can really ease anxious feelings. Just picturing it, that there is a link between feeling highly connected to nature and low levels of anxiety has been proven. So bring in plants, use shades of green in your accessories or maybe even painting. But you can also use posters in smaller areas. They don't take up much room. For example, this almost looks like when you're walking down this hall that you can actually cross that little bridge. Well, you can't. There's a wall there, and you do have to turn left. And here's another situation. Again, there is a wall there, and you have to turn right. But again, it gives you such a beautiful view and a great connection to nature. So how can nature benefit our mental health? Boy, are there so many ways. And again, if you're going to be in a smaller space, this could be very, very important. It improves your mood. It reduces feelings of stress or anger. It can help you take time out and feel more relaxed. It improves our physical health. It improves our confidence and self-esteem. It helps you be more active, helps you make new connections in your mind, with your brain. So clutter is another thing that we need to worry about. Clutter can also affect us mentally. So clutter has to be handled in a smaller space, even more so. You have less space to think about. So multitasking, is not really a very positive thing. Physical clutter overloads your senses and makes you feel stressed and impairs your ability to really think creatively. This has to do with visual clutter too. So we need to be very careful what we've got going on in any one of our smaller rooms. I don't know about you, but these pictures scare me a little bit. In Princeton, the psychological effect of clutter showed that clutter in sight competes for your brain resources and prevents you from focusing. So again, it's a big deal for us to handle this for smaller spaces. When women were describing living in cluttered areas, they actually were more depressed and fatigued in this particular study. So again, we want to stay away from that. We want people to feel content and positive. So clutter is very important for us, for you to stay on top of extremely. So the flow of energy through your space, whether it's larger or smaller, needs to be really good. We don't want it to stagnate. We need to make sure that it flows real easily. Make sure that it's very abundant and is under control. And if you've taken any of our classes or you've maybe listened to one of our other newsletters or videos, you know that the picture on the left-hand side represents the two bad types of energy flow, stagnant, and then actually what happened in this case was forceful to get to this point. You want to get it to be a slow, meandering process like you see in the top right-hand picture. So, and another conclusion, we've got to get really organized big time, especially when we're living in a smaller space. So the smaller the space, the worse this situation can get out of hand. Another study, people with clean houses are healthier than people with messy houses. And since we have a smaller space, we should have less of an excuse. You'll find out if you take care of keeping it clean, it really will mentally make you feel so much better. So stay on top of it. Less will feel like more if you do that. So stress can be multiplied and needs to be reduced. We're always trying to do this with respect to Feng Shui, always trying to make the space feel secure, very comfortable, and as spacious as possible. So one of the things that can hurt us is something called poison arrows. So we got to remember this when we're covering smaller spaces, even more so, because they're going to be even more of a problem. Another study, this one by a university in Japan, that had to do with the sharp edges that you see here. And come off a corner, it can come off the ceiling, okay? But they found out that when the corners were 45 or 90 degrees, the sharp corners came up as much larger. And they really elicited large negative feelings. So one of the things we do in Feng Shui is soften corners a lot. And you can see that more and more builders are shaving off the corners of columns at this point. And again, there's a reason why that is more positive to a human being. Color will also be very large in a small space. It can be overwhelming, or it could be not very helpful at all. There is a theory that, again, I know you've heard before, called the yin-yang theory, and we need to make sure that there's a good mix of darkness to light so that everything is comfortable and appreciated. So light is yang, but without some shade, the yin, we really do not get the best effect in our space, in our environment. So a room can come off poorly with too much yang or too much yin. In a small space, we need to get mixed right even more so. And of course, lighting is huge. Don't forget the natural light. Play it up. There have been a lot of developments over the years, and Purdue University has developed a new white paint that actually reflects light over 95% of sunlight. So this can be very helpful too in a small area. The reflection can be very helpful. So again, another possibility is that you could use a very reflective paint on the walls. The different colors do have a large effect on behavior and outcomes, and we need to consider that. So yin colors like this, understand that they actually recede in lower energy. In a smaller space, this would be your sleeping area. And yang considerations, these things actually advance and excite people and are great for socialization. So you don't want to go crazy in a smaller space, but play it up a little bit more. Mirrors could be very important to you also in a smaller space. They can do an awful lot of things for you. They can make a room look and feel slightly bigger. They can also reflect very positive features. Like you can see, especially the picture to the right, it actually duplicates those flowers. It doubles them. And it will make the room more spacious. And again, it's probably very important for a smaller space. So when folks enter a new environment, there's a basic response. We want to try to decrease or even eliminate the severity of a particular response, fight or flee. We want them to immediately, when they walk in, feel very good, very positive. So odor can also be something that plays that up too. It should always be subtle, but it is another thing that you might want to consider. You want to make sure your smaller space, your apartment, your condo, or a home smells nice. smells good. You might have some narrow hallways or dark corners that are very uninviting. So using mirrors, using paintings in strategic ways can be very helpful too. So in summary, just because your space is smaller, a few small changes permit us to be happy and more content. Everything you bring in can make an area feel even smaller or actually give off more of an idea of spaciousness. We need to change our perception, and there are several ways of doing it, and I hope we gave you some at this point. Thanks for watching.